Hi there, I'm Andy. I've decided to make a YouTube channel. I've called it Camper Camera Go. As I said, I've called the channel Camper Camera Go. That's because I've got a camper. We bought it just in May last year, and I've got a camera. In fact, I've got a few cameras, and I like to go outdoors, exploring, taking pictures, and I thought it would be fun to share some of that with you. You can follow my adventures in the motorhome and with the photography. To introduce myself as a photographer, I thought it would be a good idea to go through what I think are my best pictures of 2018. So I've selected 12 that are my personal favourites. You might not agree, and sometimes as the photographer it's difficult to distance yourself between what makes a good photo and what was just an enjoyable experience in making the photo. But anyway, here's my top 12. This is Dunstanburgh Castle in Northumberland. I'd spent a couple of nights in the motorhome just a little bit further north up the coast, and on the morning of this shot the weather had been quite good. I took some nice sunrise photos on the beach near Berwick-on-Tweed, and I decided to travel down to Dunstanburgh Castle with this kind of composition in mind for a nice shot over the rocks towards the castle. But by the time I got to the castle, the weather had turned. It was rainy, drizzly, windy, and of course the wind had to be blowing everything straight into the front of the lens, so it was a constant battle to try to keep the lens dry. But I did actually manage to get a shot. Another photographer that I talked to when I was there didn't even bother to get his camera out of the bag because of the weather conditions, but I felt that I'd travelled so far that I really had to make an effort, and I'm a big believer in making the most of the conditions as they are, rather than holding out for supposedly perfect light. I find that sometimes it's the poor weather conditions and moody skies that make for a dramatic photo, and some of my best pictures, in my opinion, are in those kind of conditions. The thing I like about this picture is the way the waves are splashing over the rocks in the foreground, and the line of surf leads you past the rocks towards the castle, which is partly obscured by the mist and drizzle. The rocks are some of the slipperiest I've ever come across. It's a real challenge to get across them and get set up where you want to be, and then to get back again after you've taken the photo. I certainly wouldn't want to try and beat an incoming tide across them. This image goes all the way back to January last year. It had snowed the day before, so I headed out with the camera to try and get some wintry photos. This was just north of Loch near the Drovers Inn. There's a bit of woodland where the River Falloch flows through just next to the road, and I wanted to go in and try and get some pictures of the snow falling through the trees. As I was there, the snow got heavier and heavier, and I thought I'd probably best pack up and head back so that I didn't get stuck. I did have a birthday party to go to that day. I thought I was being quite cautious heading back at that time, but I literally just about made it in time. And this was the picture that I like best on the day. I love the way it's captured the snow falling through the trees onto the partly frozen surface of the river. Like I said earlier, I don't often shoot at sunrise and sunset. I'm too lazy to get up for sunrise usually, and sunsets just I don't know, they don't really appeal to me necessarily all that much. But this is an exception. This is taken from Ayrshire looking across towards the Isle of Rum. Back in September I'd gone away for a night with the motorhome, and this was pretty much where I parked up, so it was a fabulous view to go to bed to and wake up to the following morning. Probably one of my most stressful trips in the motorhome, because on the way up I'd decided not to fill up with fuel at Fort William, as I knew that there was a fuel station in my leg, but what I didn't realise that on a Saturday afternoon it closes at about 2 p.m. and I didn't get there until tea time. So I had a look on my phone and found that the next nearest fuel station that was going to be open before Monday morning was actually all the way back in Fort William. But I thought no problem, because it's about 39 miles and the trip computer on the motorhome was showing a range of more than 70 miles. So I thought that'll be fine. But when I actually set off the following morning, after the first couple of hills from Ayrshire, the trip computer was showing that there were more miles remaining than what I'd actually got range. So it was quite a stressful journey all the way back to Fort William. Didn't know if I was going to make it, but luckily I did. This image is from a day when I was out taking photos with fellow photographer and friend Joe Porter. We were in the Trossachs to the north of Glasgow, and Joe was driving that day, and I managed to forget to take my tripod with me. I'd left it in my own car. I mean, Joe did offer to let me use his tripod, but I'm stubborn like that, and I decided that I would just use it as an opportunity to handhold for the day, and it gave me the freedom to walk around and try compositions that I might not otherwise have bothered with if I'd have been using the tripod. And I was really pleased with the location that I took this from. I used a Lensbaby Velvet 85 lens, which gives a lovely soft glow around the edge of the image and draws the eye in towards the tree in the centre, which is clearly the subject. It's certainly one of my favourite pictures of the year, and one that I'd be really happy to have up on my wall. This is Loch Doon in Ayrshire, taken back in October. I was on my way down to visit my son in the south of Scotland where he lives, and I stopped off at the loch on my way down. It's a place that I've driven past quite a few times before but never actually stopped at. So I explored a bit around the edge of the loch, and I found this location where there was a nice view of a small island. And the patchy sunlight on the day was creating some nice shapes and patterns on the surface of the loch. So I got set up and just waited for the light to fall where I hoped it would, and I was lucky to get this picture with the island silhouetted in a nice pool of light. This is the Ladies' Tower near Elie in Fife. It's an area that I've not really got much experience of exploring, and I went across there with the idea of trying to get some sunset and sunrise shots. I spent the night in the motorhome. I arrived just before sunset, a bit later than what I'd actually hoped for, and so I was running out of time before the light faded. I didn't even know that this tower was there, so it was quite a surprise when I was walking around the coast. And I found this location and set up what I felt was a nice composition and slightly long exposure to get movement in the water, and I just love the overall feel of the picture. The following morning I took some pictures of the lighthouse, which was what I'd expected to find at Elie. This image is actually completely different from the way I'd envisioned it at the time that I took it. I'd gone for a landscape orientation, but when I was processing it, I really wasn't getting the kind of result that I wanted. It certainly wasn't what I had in mind when I took it, and it was only when I changed the composition to a portrait orientation that I felt that it really came together. And I love the silky smoothness of the sky and the way the lighthouse itself really stands out against that moody sky. I think this is possibly one of my favourite, if not the actual favourite, of the last 12 months. Just along the coast from Elie is the village of St Monans. It's a small fishing village, quite famous for its zigzaggy pier, which the locals call the blocks. I spent some time actually exploring around the village itself, and as I was walking around the edge of the harbour, I saw this composition with the boat Speedwell tied up alongside, and the sort of quaint, timeless cottages and buildings behind it, which I processed to give quite a painterly feel. And I think it's really succeeded, and I took the shot with a Lens Baby double glass optic in the Composer Pro, and that gives a really soft focus effect around the edges, which draws the eye in towards the boat and the buildings behind it. I have heard it said before that landscape photographers are just experts in taking pictures of rocks and trees, and I guess I'm no exception to this. This is a road that runs from Greenock down to Loch, over the hills on the west coast of Scotland, and it's a lovely country road. And I was heading out one afternoon, early evening, just before sunset, to try and get some pictures around sunset. And as I was getting close to Loch, I looked across and saw this tree on the skyline being illuminated by a break in the clouds with the sunlight coming through. So by the time I'd stopped the car and got set up, the conditions had completely changed, obviously, with the clouds moving. So I waited for about 15 minutes until another break in the cloud came along and gave a similar effect with a highlight over the tree. I think it works really well, quite a stark, contrasty, dramatic image. This is Castle Stalker on the west coast of Scotland. I stayed in the motorhome for a couple of nights just about 2 or 3 miles away and took a walk on this morning. It was really quite a nice day, and when I arrived there I found a composition that I liked, but I realised that I was going to have to use the telephoto lens to get the kind of perspective that I wanted, and of course that meant that I couldn't get it all in one shot. So this is actually a panoramic shot that's made up of 8 separate shots that were stitched together in Lightroom afterwards. I love the way the light is falling on the castle and on parts of the hillside behind, and the detail in the shot, because it's made up of the 8 separate shots, is just phenomenal. I've got it blown up actually 6 feet wide on my wall at home, and it looks superb. In August, Eileen was away in the States for a week and the kids were away at Granny's. I was left at home with the dogs, and instead of throwing wild parties like most people would, I decided to go out with the camera and try and get some nice images. But the day that I picked was a really miserable, dull day, misty, low cloud, drizzle. I really was 50-50 about whether I was going to actually bother to go out. I'm so glad that I did, because I got this image and a couple of others that I quite like as well, that I really didn't expect in those kind of conditions. This is Loch Fyne near Stalker on the west coast of Scotland. Just the solitary boat caught my eye as it was sitting there with a cloud down on the tops of the hills on either side, which, using the Lens Baby Velvet 85 lens again, gave that softness to the image, which gives it a really calm and peaceful look. I'm a big fan of black and white photography. This picture of the boathouse at Loch Chon in the Trossachs is almost exactly the same location as the autumn photo that I showed, but this was taken a couple of months earlier when the trees were all much greener, and in colour I really didn't feel that it was working very well, and so I shot it with a black and white contrasty image in mind. And I love the way the darkness of the water really allows the reeds and the water lilies and the boathouse itself to stand out in the image. And again, taken with the Lens Baby Velvet 85 lens. You've probably seen a bit of a theme here. It seems to be the lens that I've taken most of my favourite shots with over the last year. So that's my 12 favourite images from 2018. As you can see, there's a split between colour and black and white. I do enjoy shooting in black and white. Well, I always shoot in colour, but sometimes I shoot with a black and white image in mind and change it at the processing stage back at the computer. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. Remember to subscribe and click on the notification icon if you want to hear when my next video comes out. You can see more of my photography on my website, andyhallphoto.com, and I'm also on Facebook and Instagram as Andy Hall Photography. I'm Andy, this is Camper Camera Go. Thanks for watching and hope to see you next time.